Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a writer and a teacher, and my new collection, Starlight, is out for sale now. You can get it in ebook or paperback, and the audiobook is currently in production. The first week or month of sales are really important for the success of a book, and reviews are super duper important. So if you'd like to support me or the channel, or if you've gotten a lot out of my content, if you like my writing, or you don't know because you've never read it and you'd like to try it out, I'd appreciate you picking up a copy. And if you've already bought it and want to leave me an Amazon and or Goodreads review, that'd be super duper. So it's October. It's a little scary. My collection is a little spooky. So today we're talking about 7 tips for writing death scenes. Like I always say, there are no hard rules in writing. You can pretty much break any rule if you do it on purpose. So these are just some tips you can keep in mind if you'd like. And we're gonna look at some examples from my patrons. If you'd like to have some of your writing featured in a video, check out patreon.com/HannahLeeKidder. Before we get into the death scene specific tips, remember that these videos build on each other. Before you write good death scene description, you need to know how to write good scene description. If you have a fight leading up to your death scene, I also have a video on how to write effective fight scenes. So those will give you the building blocks, but in this video, we're going to get into more specific strategies for death scenes. Number 1, you have to earn the death scene. If we're supposed to care about this character's death, your reader needs to be attached to them in some way. It's okay if they hate the character. They have to have some kind of feeling for them in order to feel anything about their death. If we're not supposed to care so much about their death, then this might not apply. But if the reader should be impacted by a character death, you need to establish some kind of connection, even if it's super quick and they die early in the story. For example, my roommate and I have been rewatching The Haunting of Hill House because it's so good. So kind of spoilers for that if you haven't seen it yet. But in the first episode, a character dies. Second episode? I think it's the first episode. So we don't see her for a long time, but we see her as a child, as an adult. We see her connections to other people. We get to understand her struggles. So we care about her. She's also just extremely likable. The rest of the series is catching up to what happened before her death, but even before we see all of that, we care about her, so we're sad that she dies. And since we have an affection for her, we can empathize with the other characters, which are her family members dealing with her death. Which brings me to my second tip. Show how it affects other characters. Like I said, after that character dies, we see her family react to it. They literally feel her die, and you see how she was the thing that was connecting all of the family members, and without her, they don't have that structure and they fall apart. So after that character's death, how does it affect everyone else? Are they mourning? Are they relieved? Did they kill them? Are they guilty? Figure out how it would make each of them feel and incorporate that into the rest of their character arcs. And maybe not every character is going to be affected the same way that they are in Hill House, but make that decision on purpose. Think about each character, their relation to the character that died, and how they would react to it, and then how it would impact their decisions later on. Tip 3, don't go melodramatic. Sure, some deaths are dramatic, some are very violent, suicides, murders, horrific accidents. But if you go overly dramatic with it, or have the other characters reacting in very theatrical, cliche ways, it can actually be less impactful than if you were a little softer with it. I talk about this a lot, but subtlety and understatement is often a lot more effective than heavy-handedness. Tip 4, know what you want going into the scene. What are your readers supposed to feel after the death? Do you want them to be surprised or sad or detached? Your goal is going to dictate how the scene plays out and also through the lens that we see it. For example, say that you have multiple perspective characters and one of the character's parents die. If you see it through that character, it's going to be a lot different than if you saw it through the eyes of a character who's less attached to the situation. So if you want it to be very sad, you'd see it through the child character. If you maybe want it to be a little less intense, you could see it through someone else. Or if you want to see that child character's reaction to their parents' death, you might see it through a different character. So know what reaction you want from your audience so that you can choose the best tone and the best view to see it. Tip 5, let that death echo through the rest of the story. Haunting of Hill House is a great example because the death is the inciting incident. So everything that happens was put into motion by that character dying. It doesn't have to be that intense, but if you have a main character die, it can't just be contained in that scene. It's going to put other things in motion. Your other characters are going to react to other things differently. It's going to shift their perspective. Not every death has to be super duper important, but if it's a main character or even just a named character's death, it should affect something else in the story. Tip 6, if you want the death of a character to be particularly tragic, one thing you could try is giving them a goal that they never see realized. For example, in one of my books, I have a character who really wants his land back. That's his main goal because it was stolen from him and his children are buried there. In order for him to get that land back, the nation has to be freed. He dies in the final battle, and even though they win, he never gets to see the nation freed. The salve on this wound is that the surviving characters take him back and bury him with his children. So that's almost a consolation prize, but it's still very sad. If you want to be more brutal, don't give any kind of salve. Just have them die before their goal is realized, and then it's never realized. Tip 7, you can try planting something a little earlier in the story that would make the death hurt a little more. These tips are so evil. As an example, I had a character who really loved the ceilings in a temple, and then they're killed in that temple. And when the main character goes to get their body, they note that their great eyes are like watching the ceiling that they'd never see again. Planting a little something like that can do a lot to humanize a character in their death and just give it a little extra oof. So now we're going to look at a couple of scenes to see how these things might apply. If you'd like your scenes edited in a video, go to patreon.com/HannahLeeKidder. This is a scene from my writing partner Gloria's piece, The Pirate King. It's so good, and it's a part of her collection Host, which is also very good, and it's dropping, I think, next week. I'm going to link it in the description. You should definitely check it out. The Pirate King doesn't come back. Brigid screams at the harbor to the gods, demanding answers from a silent sky. She staggers to her feet and faces the pitch-dark sea clutching her chest. There are no more sails on the horizon. She took the sun with her, leaving Brigid with the moon, fog, and rainfall. She tries to be as brave as the Pirate King, but she's made of different stuff. If she's alive, then she's chosen to leave, and this is the thought that strangles her by night. I'm gonna change this to Brigid. It's difficult when it's two female characters, but Brigid spends her nights at the cliffside where her mother is buried. When a storm comes through, she maintains her vigil, gripping the rock with every harsh buffet of wind. Rain streaks her hair, her cheeks, but it cannot unmark her. That's so good. The ocean roils, swirling and splashing in an angry, grasping rhythm. If she'd only stayed or taken Brigid with her so she could die too. Her heart wrenches free from her chest and soars down like a broken bird. She doesn't mean to fall, she doesn't want to die, not really, but she can't stop the tilt once it started and her body follows her heart's bleeding path to the sea. There's no pain when she shatters, only the gentle yelp of sea lions playing in the water. This scene is so good. The prose is great. I think the beats are great. I really like her heart wrenches free from her chest and soars down like a broken bird. For two reasons. One, because it's really good, and two, she got some beta feedback from this person who was like, your writing needs work, and then had this list of inane things that they thought was wrong with this story. And one of them was that broken birds don't soar. That simile doesn't work. These are the things that keep me awake at night because I am laughing. This ending just stabs my heart. We see her mourning the death of the Pirate King. So like I said, how does the death affect the other characters? I think Gloria has an excellent grasp of how she wants the reader to feel about the death scene. Sad. And the scene accomplishes that. This is a very dramatic scene, but it's not overly dramatic. It's actually pretty simple, and the drama comes from that simplicity. Then we see Brigid's death, which is also pretty simple and subtle. Like, for this being a mourning the death of your lover scene and a suicide scene, it's incredibly understated. And the imagery of her following her heart off the cliff to her death, like that feeling of her heart ripping out, then her just collapsing to meet it. It's kind of metaphorical, but it's also really tangible. I think this is a well-written scene, and I feel emotional every time I read it. This next scene is from my patron Owen, and I'm gonna edit it, and I haven't read the rest of this story, so Owen, if I changed something that was important, I'm sorry. Only the Montezuma's pilots were manning their stations now. Lily watched as other crew members strapped explosives to the fragile bulkhead around the breaching pod impact. I'm going to put Lily watched other crew members strap explosives. Is that necessary? She asked. If we're ramming that enemy ship, we're gone anyway, Captain Matthews said, not looking at her. Might as well make it quick. Matthews treated the crew as equals. Captain had lost its meaning. Each bang on the blast doors drew the crew's attention and sped up their preparations. Matthews gave the navigator the last available combat vest and sent him to join the rest in a fortified position near the doors. I'm going to make this a new paragraph. Drew the crew's attention and sped up their preparations is a little telly. We can show this somehow. Since we're In Lily's perspective, we can talk about how she feels. So each bang on the blast doors, like, made Lily's spine flinch or something. And the crew scramble faster. That'll work. I'm going to make this a new paragraph. Matthews gave the navigator the last available combat vest and sent him to join the rest in a fortified position near the doors. In a fortified position is pretty bulky, so we can say join the rest in formation. If they get in here, we blow out the bridge, Matthews said to Lily. We can't give them a chance to halt this ship. I'm going to say if they get in, we blow the bridge, Matthews said to Lily. I'm going to take out this last bit of dialogue just because I feel like she would know what's going on if she's there. If they get in, we blow the bridge. The detonator made its way to Matthew's hands. Lily stared at him, wondering. The detonator's not doing anything on its own. We could say something like he held it, or wait, Matthews pocketed the device. We can just have him pocket it here. He pocketed the detonator. Lily stared at him. I'm going to take out wondering. Matthews pocketed the device. Don't look at me like that. We don't need that anymore because it's already in his pocket. Can you do it? I'll have to. It's not like I'll live to regret it. Lily didn't question him further. Morals were out the window. They both knew that. I think this goes without saying, so I'll take that out. Matthews raised his voice. Pilots begin the final maneuver. Britain. Get us in position, then fire all remaining engines and thrusters. The Montezuma awkwardly got into position. Had the ship not been half destroyed, the pilots' jobs would have been easier. They sped towards the damaged underside of the enemy ship, the weakest point. Hold positions, Matthews said. He flexed his fingers and aimed his handgun at the blast doors. The metal was cracking. I might, describe that sound a little more. I don't want to. But if I were writing this scene, I would, I feel like you could do some gnarly things with what that would sound like and how scary it would be. The crew braced for the combined boarding parties. Lily rolled up the sleeves of her borrowed navy jacket and joined them. The door banged again. Fragments broke off. The crew braced for the combined boarding parties. That's a little telly. We can just describe them bracing for it and then telling us that there's going to be combined boarding parties. I guess that's two groups attacking them. I don't know. But we can say something specific like crew members shifted or dropped lower into fighting stances, gripping their guns tighter. Or whatever, just something specific. I'm going to take out there. Gripping guns tighter. Lily rolled up the sleeves of her borrowed navy jacket and joined them. Door banged again, fragments broke off. Next one, Lily asked. Matthews gulped and nodded. Next one. He was right. A final explosive broke down the doors. I'm going to say broke the doors. Marines started to pour in. Again, begin, start, don't need them. Marines poured in. The crew held their ground and opened fire, but the defense lasted seconds. Several went down instantly. They were outgunned and outnumbered. Matthews retreated and readied the detonator, but before he could press it, he was shot through the neck. I think we could make that a little umphier. I said don't go melodrama, but you can still go, gory when you need to. You can get spicier. There's a balance between being too understated and being too dramatic. I don't really like several went down instantly. They were outgunned and outnumbered. It's kind of not clinical, but it could be spicier. So we could say something like, bodies dropped like rain. Why not? I'm also going to make this its own paragraph. Matthews retreated and readied the detonator, but before he could press it, he was shot through the neck. When Lily saw the captain drop dead, she dove through the crossfire and took the detonator herself as she shuffled back behind cover. A surge of pain made her wince. As she shuffled back behind cover, a surge of pain made her wince. Only when she looked down did she notice the 2 gunshots bleeding through her vest. She ignored it. She stared at the breaching pod, forced every last breath out of her lungs, and pressed the button. The hull blew open, flushing out the air and silencing the explosion the instant it happened. A few seconds passed. The saliva on her tongue boiled. Her eyes began to freeze, and then she was gone. What if we, make this a little more frantic? So, Matthews pulled the detonator, but it slipped from his grip? What if he drops it? He caught it before it hit the ground, but not before the bullet tore through his neck? That could be cute. So in moments of tension like this, where she just saw the captain die, she knows she's about to go on a little suicide mission, words like when at the beginning of sentences, or just this structure where it's when she saw this, she did this. It slows down the pacing and makes it less frantic, so I'm going to take that out. Lily saw the captain drop dead. Let's put drop. Or Lily saw him fall. And dove through the crossfire to land too hard on her shoulder next to him. Or whatever. The things that I'm putting don't have to be what it says. This is just an example of saying something specific instead of just vaguely telling, you know? So she can land hard on her shoulder. Oof. Maybe knocks the wind out of her. I think it'd be cute if he fell on top of the detonator and she had to like roll his body over. His body was heavy on top of the detonator. And maybe she had to use both feet to roll him off. Or to shove him off. And then she doesn't feel the bullets at first, but I think we could have her feel the bullets. So like a shot ripped her shoulder and she screamed. Flicking off the safety cover and shoving her thumb into the button with all the force left in her. Or something with all the force she had. Like, you could leave that little moment of hesitation before she presses it, but I kind of like it not being there. I like the suddenness of it. The hole blew open, flushing out the air and silencing the explosion the instant it happened. I'm going to say sucking out the air. Sucking out the air and sucking out the air and the explosion, leaving instant silence. I'm going to take out the few seconds passing. The saliva on her tongue boiled, her eyes began to freeze. I'm going to make this end one sentence and be like, the saliva on her tongue boiled. We need one other thing. Like her lungs seized. I'm not researching to see what happens in this situation. The saliva on her tongue boiled, her lungs seized, and her vision bled to white. I like that better than like her eyes glassing over or whatever it had said, because we're inside of her. We don't see her die. We feel her die. And that feels more impactful to me. So really like play by playing the deaths with crisp and specific details and then describing Lily's death from inside of Lily as opposed to an outside observer, I think makes that scene a lot more impactful. That's all I got today. Hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my patrons for sponsoring this video. And thank you, Owen and Gloria, for letting me use your scenes. If you want your scenes read in a video, go to patreon.com/HannahLeeKidder for that perk and tons more. Also, buy my book. Review my book, please. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Bye.